Okay, so everybody, you know that your central nervous system consists of a brain and a spinal cord, right? So in last class I talked about the brain, so today I will talk about the spinal cord, another very important organ of your body. So first we will see the anatomy of the spinal cord. Then we'll see the external features. If you see the spinal cord from outside, how it looks like, what are the structures you can see from outside without dissecting. That's the external features. Then we'll talk about the spinal nerves. I mentioned in last class that from the spinal cord, 31 pairs of nerves arise, right? So those are the spinal nerves, 31 pairs. We'll see how a spinal nerve is formed. Then we'll talk about the ascending and descending tracts. If you see inside the spinal cord, two types of tracts. Tracts are the bundles of fibers. So some bundles of fibers are going upwards, those are called ascending, and some are going downwards, those are called descending. Makes sense, right? Because you know that sensory signal goes to the brain, right? So ascending tracts take the sensory signals to the brain. Makes sense? And you also know that motor command goes down, out from the brain, right? So descending tracts are motor tracts, carry the motor signal. So inside the spinal cord you have both ascending and descending tracts. Then we'll talk about the relay. I mentioned in last class that if I touch the skin here, the signal goes to the brain, right? But it is pretty far, right? So in some locations the signal is relayed. That means one group of neurons hand over the signal to another group of neurons, right? And then that group will take it up to certain distance and will give it to another group of neurons. Make sense? So that's the relay. So we'll see in sensory and motor pathway where the relay takes place. Then we'll talk a little bit about the spinal cord trauma, injury to the spinal cord. So those are the things we'll go over, okay? First, the location. Spinal cord begins at the foramen magnum. You all remember, this is the foramen magnum, right? So starts here and goes down all the way to lumbar 1 vertebrae. Sometime it goes down to lumbar 2, but most of the cases ends at lumbar 1. Make sense? So from the foramen magnum here to lumbar 1 or lumbar 2. Below lumbar 2, there is no spinal cord in this part. So it's somewhere here. Make sense? Size. The length is about 18 inches. That means 45 centimeter. And half inch or 14 millimeter wide. Function. It provides two ways communication. I have already mentioned, right? Ascending and descending. Remember that? Ascending sensory and descending motor, right? So two types of tracts are present inside the spinal cord. That means two-way communication is the function. Protection. Like your brain, spinal cord is also heavily protected by a number of structures. You all know that spinal cord is located inside the vertebral column or spine, right? or vertebral column. So vertebrae are the bones that protect the spinal cord, but also other structures are around the spinal cord that protect it. So we'll see here. This is a cross section. If I cut the vertebral column this way, like this, make a slice, you can see around the spinal cord. This is the spinal cord. So which structures are protecting the spinal cord? If you see from outside to inside, first is the bone, right? Which bone? Vertebrae. Then under the bone, you know that we have dura mater, then arachnoid mater, then pia mater is the innermost meninges which is attached to the spinal cord. Now, in case of spinal cord, there is an extra layer that is not present around the brain. What is that extra layer? Epidural fat. Outside of the dura mater, that means between the bone and the dura mater, you have fat there. In case of brain, around the brain there is no fat. Make sense? So that layer of fat is an extra layer. Make sense? To protect the spinal cord. Where that fat is located? In epidural space. That means not subdural, epidural. Subdural means under the dura mater, right? And epidural is outside of the dura mater. Okay, so let's repeat again. Bone, which is vertebrae, then epidural fat, then we have dura mater, arachnoid mater, and under the arachnoid mater we have cerebrospinal fluid, same as brain. And then pia mater, which is directly attached to the spinal cord. Okay, so those are the structures protecting the spinal cord. Anatomy of the spinal cord. If you see the spinal cord from outside, what are the external features you see? So, okay. You have foramen magnum here. The upper end of the spinal cord is here, and this is lumbar 1 or lumbar 2 vertebrae. Okay. Now, in the spinal cord, in two locations, you will see slightly expanded. Two locations, the spinal cord is slightly wider or expanded. So, those are called the enlargements. Okay, so two enlargements are present in the spinal cord. One is called cervical, because in the neck area here, and another is lumbar. Enlargements. Okay, so cervical in this area and lumbar in this area, you have expansions. Then, if you see the lower end of the spinal cord, it is conical shaped or cone shaped lower end. That is called conus medullaris. Conus medullaris. Okay, makes sense. Cone shaped lower end of the spinal cord. Then, at the lower end of the spinal cord, you will see many nerve roots. These are called nerve roots. A bunch of nerve roots arise from the lower end. and these nerve roots together look like the tail of a horse. Have you seen horse tail? So it looks like that, and it is called chordae equine. Chordae equine. Horse tail like structure formed by bunch of nerve roots. Okay, chordae equine. Many nerve roots are together. Okay. Then from the lower pointed end of conus medullaris, a thin cord-like structure extends and gets attached to the coccyx, the tailbone. And this thin cord is called phylum terminale. Phylum terminale. Okay. It is a thin cord that extends from the lower end of conus medullaris to what? Coccyx, the tailbone. Okay. And then if you see the covering of the spinal cord, you already know pia mater is attached to the spinal cord, right? That's the innermost layer of meninges. So this is the pia mater, innermost meninges. Then you have arachnoid mater, the middle layer. You have cerebrospinal fluid here, and the outermost is the dura mater, right? You know that. So this is the toughest one, dura mater. Those are the meninges, 3 layers. So this is dura, and innermost is the pia. What happens, you see, from pia mater, ligaments arise like this, and they pass through the arachnoid and get attached to the dura. So from the pia mater, ligaments arise and go all the way to the dura mater. So these ligaments are called denticulate. Denticulate ligaments. Okay. So that's the external structures in the spinal cord. So let's quickly review to see how good your memory is. Okay. So spinal cord upper end is where? At the foramen magnum, right? And lower end goes down to lumbar 1 or sometimes number 2. Okay, so that's the extent, right? Upper end and lower end. Now, in the spinal cord, how many enlargements you have? 2 locations, right? One is called cervical and another is lumbar enlargements. Now, if I ask you, just common sense, why you have enlargement in this area, cervical area and lumbar area? The reason is, you know, from your upper limbs, many nerves, right, go and take the signal to the spinal cord. Make sense? So you need more neurons there to receive the sensory signals, right? So that's why that area is expanded. Makes sense, right? And from the lower limbs, many nerves go to the spinal cord too, right? Take the signal to the spinal cord. So the lumbar part of the spinal cord receives that signal from the lower limbs. Make sense? So that's why you need more neurons there to receive the signal, right? So that's why in those 2 areas you see expansions. Those are called enlargements, right? So 2. Now, the lower end of the spinal cord, the shape is what? Cone shaped, right? That is called
Conus
conus medullaris. Make sense? And a number of spinal nerve roots arise from the lower end, right? And they form bundle. A bunch of nerve roots is called what? Chordae equinae. Horse tail. Chordae equinae. Okay? And from the lower pointed end of the spinal cord, a thin cord-like structure goes down to the coccyx, right? So that is called what? Phylum terminale. Now see, why you need that phylum terminale? So that ties the lower end of the spinal cord to the bone, right? Coccyx. So the spinal cord will not move like this. Make sense? So keep it in right location, right? So it won't be able to move too much. Also, from the pia mater, ligaments arise. Those are called denticulate ligaments, right? Many. And going to the dura mater. So those are also like, tying the spinal cord to the wall. So spinal cord will not be able to move too much, okay? So it is also protection to the spinal cord. Okay, so those are the structures you can see from outside. This is not a great picture, but you can see some of those structures. You see enlargements, cervical and lumbar. This area is narrow. Those two areas are wider. See the lower end, conical shape, conus medullaris. This is phylum terminale, going all the way to the coccyx and nerve roots. Okay. Lumbar puncture. Lumbar puncture is a procedure to collect cerebrospinal fluid from the body. Now you tell me, cerebrospinal fluid is located where?
Between the pia mater and the dura mater.
No, between arachnoid and pia. That means subarachnoid space, right? In subarachnoid space. So what we do, we insert needle all the way to subarachnoid space, right? Where you have cerebrospinal fluid, make sense? And you have to draw the fluid from there. Now, when we do that procedure, we insert the needle at lower lumbar area. Why we do at lower lumbar area? Because there is no spinal cord there, right? Spinal cord ends where? At L1, or if it goes further down, maximum L2, right? It won't go beyond that. So below L2 is safe. Make sense? Below L2 is safe because there is no spinal cord there. But what happens? The arachnoid mater, dura mater, pia mater, they continue. Okay? So this is the end of the spinal cord, but the coverings go further down. Make sense? So fluid is there. So if you insert needle here without hurting the spinal cord, right? You can collect the cerebrospinal fluid. It's safe. So that's why we collect the cerebrospinal fluid from the lower lumbar region. Lower lumbar region. What we ask the patient to do, we ask the patient to lie down sideways like this and turn the upper part of the body forward like this. So what it does, you see here, these are the spinous processes, right? You know that, spinous process. So when the person turns the body like this, these spinous processes go apart from each other. Make sense? Provide more space there. And you now see, in between the spinous process, you have opening to reach to the subarachnoid space. So you have now more space here. So you can insert the needle comfortably to reach to the subarachnoid space. Make sense? Collect the cerebrospinal fluid from there. So we ask the patient to do like this, so the space will get bigger. Okay? Okay, so that's the way we collect the cerebrospinal fluid from the subarachnoid space. Now, why we need to collect the cerebrospinal fluid? we collect the cerebrospinal fluid to test the fluid if there is any blood, any trace of blood, right, is present. Sometimes internal hemorrhage. If you suspect that the patient might have internal bleeding, right, in the brain or the spinal cord. You know, cerebrospinal fluid circulates around the brain and the spinal cord, right? So if bleeding occurs here, that blood will also go there because fluid is circulating. Make sense? So you collect the fluid and see under the microscope if there is any blood cell there. Make sense? Number two, if there is any microorganism. If you suspect that someone has meningitis or encephalitis, so you will see if there is any microorganism there, right? And then you will give antibiotic treatment. Make sense? So since the fluid circulates throughout the central nervous system, you can find those components or elements in the cerebrospinal. Okay. So that is the lumbar puncture. Now, we know that from both sides of the spinal cord, how many spinal nerves arise?
31.
31 what?
Pairs.
Yeah, you have to say that. 31 pairs. Those are the spinal nerves. Okay? So if I just make a cross section here to see one segment, you have the spinal nerves, and we'll see now that segment. So if I just make a slice of the spinal cord and see, okay, so this is the section of the spinal cord, and you already know that inside the spinal cord you have the gray matter, right, and white matter. So this is the gray matter, and this is the white matter. Okay, inside the spinal cord. There is a central canal here. So first we'll see the gray matter of the spinal cord. You know, in last class I mentioned that why gray matter is gray, why white matter is white. In white matter you have lot of what? Myelinated axon, right? Myelinated axon. Remember that? That's why it is white. In gray matter you have what? Cell bodies of neurons with nasal granules inside, right? So this is gray matter. In each half of gray matter, you have 3 horns. You see here, this is one horn, another horn, another horn. How many horns? 3 in each side. Now, this is front, this is back. So this horn is called ventral horn. Ventral horn, horn-like structure. And this is called what? If this is ventral, this is what?
Dorsal.
Dorsal. Okay? And this one is lateral. Three horns. Make sense? In ventral horn, you have the motor neurons. Motor neurons. Okay, so in ventral horn, you have motor neurons. In dorsal horn, you have sensory neurons. dorsal horn, you have sensory type neurons. Make sense? So ventral horn has motor type neurons. Dorsal horn has what? Sensory type neurons. And in lateral horn, you have autonomic neurons. Okay. So three horn has three types of neurons. Same thing in this side. Okay. Yeah, I'm showing one side. Now, let me erase this now. These are sensory neurons, right? These are sensory neurons. These are what? Motor neurons. So sensory neurons, this is a spinal cord. Now look at me, if I touch here, that sensory signal, touch signal will go to the spinal cord. Make sense? Then will go to the brain. So the signal will be taken to the spinal cord, right? In case of sensory. From the body, it will be taken to the spinal cord. So which way the signal will go? This way. Make sense? Towards the spinal cord. Going towards the spinal cord, sensory. Okay, now you tell me motor. Motor will go to the muscle, right? So from the spinal cord to the muscle, right? Motor command. So in this case, these are motor neurons. So the signal will get out towards the muscle. So the signal will get out that way. So these are the axons or nerve fibers, take the signal to the spinal cord, to the sensory neurons, and these are taking out from the motor neurons. Okay, so opposite directions. Now you see what happens. This is interesting. These two types of fibers or axons join together. Unite and form a nerve, and that is the spinal nerve. So this is how the spinal nerve is formed. That's how the spinal nerve is formed, by the union of two types of fibers. So this is the spinal nerve. Okay, 31 pairs are formed from the spinal cord. Now, this bundle of fibers is called dorsal root. That's the bundle of fibers. And this bundle of motor fibers is called ventral root. This is ventral front, this is dorsal horn, ventral horn. Ventral root, dorsal root. In this way, everything ventral, in that way, everything dorsal. Okay. Now, one thing here, you see, in dorsal root, you have a round structure that is called a ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion. Ganglion is round or almost round structure in the peripheral nervous system. This is outside of the spinal cord, so it is a part of peripheral nervous system, not central. So this is a round structure in it that is called a ganglion. Okay? Inside this ganglion, you have another group of sensory neurons. Another group of sensory neurons. So everything in this side is sensory, remember. These are sensory neurons in dorsal horn. These are sensory neurons in dorsal root ganglion. Ganglion in dorsal root. That's why it is called dorsal root ganglion. Okay. In ventral root, you don't have any ganglion. Okay. So only the ganglion is in the sensory pathway, dorsal. Okay. Anyway, so did you get it so far? Okay. Let's review again. Inside the spinal cord, if you make a slice, cut it, you have outer part is what? Gray or white? White. Inner part is gray. In each half of gray matter, how many horns you have? 3. Ventral horn,
Dorsal,
lateral horn, right? And 3 horns house 3 types of neurons, right? Ventral horn has motor neurons, dorsal horn has sensory, and lateral horn has autonomic type neurons. Okay, very good. Now, those fibers are connected to the dorsal horn neurons. Those are sensory fibers, right? Makes sense? Because these are sensory neurons. So sensory fibers carry the signal towards the spinal cord. Make sense? If I touch, we go towards the spinal cord. Make sense? So, and the bundle of these sensory fibers or axons is called what? Dorsal root. Make sense? The bundle of fibers. And these are motor fibers, right? So take the signal out from the spinal cord. That way, right? Taking out. And the bundle of these fibers is called what? Ventral root. So root is the bundle. Okay? So 2 types of fibers, right? Motor fibers and sensory fibers. And these 2 types of fibers join, meet. Where? In the spinal cord. So these 2 roots unite to form what? The spinal nerve. That's how the spinal nerve is formed. Okay? So now you tell me, if I ask you in the test that ventral root contains what type of fibers? Sensory or motor? Motor, right? Dorsal root contains sensory. Spinal nerve contains what? Both, right? So mixed, sensory and motor. That's why we say spinal nerves are mixed type nerves because it has both sensory and motor. Okay. Now, after the spinal nerve is formed, you see here what happens. Spinal nerve is formed inside the spinal nerve. The roots come out from the spinal cord, and spinal nerve is formed around this area from both sides. In both sides around this area. Then the nerve comes out. But the spinal nerve is very short, just comes out like this and divides again like this. So this is a short nerve and it divides into 2 branches. So spinal nerve is a short mixed type nerve and it divides into 2. But in this case, something interesting, important happens. You see, in both branches, you get both types of fibers. Here, in the root, you have one type. But in these branches, you have both types of fibers. So that is important here. And that's the purpose of formation of the spinal nerve, right? So first, both types of fibers are joining together. Then what is happening? Dividing. And in both branches, now you get both types of fibers. Make sense? And these are called what? Ramus. Ventral ramus. Again, ventral dorsal, same, okay? Dorsal ramus. Make sense? So before the spinal nerve, you have what? Roots, right? And after the spinal nerve, you have what? Ramus. Rami is plural, R-A-M-I, and singular is ramus. Okay. The difference is, in case of ramus, you have both types of fibers. And now it is, you see here, divides and then innervates the body, the front part of the body, back part of the body. So this is your body, okay? This is the body wall. So the ramus will innervate the body. It will go to the skin, muscle, and other structures. Okay, like this. So everywhere in your body, you will get both sensory and motor. Make sense? Now, if your body was here, just think that it is not. But if it was here, the front part of your body would get what? Only motor, right? So you will be able to move the muscles, but no sensation there, because no sensory innervation there, right? And back part of the body will get sensation, but no movement. Make sense? Because no motor is going there. So that's why this is very important, that a spinal nerve is formed, right? Then distribute the fibers everywhere in the body. Okay? So if I ask you that draw and show different parts of the spinal cord and spinal nerve formation, this is the picture, okay? You have to draw. Can I do that? Difficult? Yes. You can do it, right? If you know, you can do it. If you don't know, you can practice. Okay, so that is a very important part of today's lecture.
What is an autonomic neuron? What is that?
Yeah, autonomic is, sympathetic, parasympathetic, right? Yes. Okay, and autonomic is present only in the thoracic part of the spinal cord. Okay, so this is actually a section in the thoracic part of the spinal cord. You have sympathetic chain here. We didn't talk about that. We have sympathetic chain like this in thoracic part, and the autonomic fibers go to the sympathetic chain and then go to the spinal nerve. So in case of thoracic part, you have some autonomic fibers too. But just know that this is the basic structure. But in case of thoracic part, you have sympathetic fibers too. First going to the sympathetic chain and then going to the spinal nerve. Okay. Okay, so that's how a spinal nerve is formed and distributed to the body wall. Okay, let's see next. So we have talked about this, we have talked about this. White matter. This is important too. In the white matter, you have myelinated fibers, right? That's why it is white. Make sense? Myelinated fibers. Now, in the white matter part, you have tracts. You remember at the very beginning today I said two types of tracts, ascending and what? Descending. Remember that? Ascending tracts and descending tracts. So those are present where? Not in the gray matter. Those are present in the white matter. Clear? Okay. Number two, tracts are what? Tracts are the bundles of fibers, myelinated fibers. Bundles of fibers. Two types of tracts are shown by two colors. The blue colored tracts here, of course in the body those are not blue, okay? Those are not blue. So don't expect that you will see blue and red inside. Sometimes the students think that arteries are blue, red veins are blue, right? They will probably see the same inside the body. They use in the book to show. Yeah. Better. Okay. So anyway, so two types of tracts. Blue tracts here are ascending tracts, that means sensory. And red tracts are motor, descending. If you remember one thing, would be helpful probably. Most of the sensory tracts start with spinal. Most of the sensory tracts start with what? Spinal. So if you hear spinothalamic, spinocerebellar, right? Those are sensory. Going from the, makes sense, you see spinothalamic, that means what? From the spinal cord to the thalamus, spinothalamic. Thalamus is in the brain, you know that, right? So it must be ascending. Spinocerebellar, if I say that, right? Going to the cerebellum, that is ascending or descending? Spinocerebellar, make sense? Ascending. And most of the motor tracts end with spinal. End with spinal. There are exceptions. Okay. So that's in general. So if I ask you in the test, spinothalamic, it is what? Ascending or descending? Ascending, right? That means what? Sensory. If I say corticospinal, descending. Cortex to the spine. Corticospinal. So, let's see the important ones. First, let's see the sensory. This is spinothalamic. In each side, you have two spinothalamic. So, total 4. This is called ventral spinothalamic. This is called lateral spinothalamic. Makes sense. Ventral in the front, lateral, lateral. So, spinothalamic. Just you write down that is spinothalamic tract carries temperature and pain. Pain and temperature, those signals. Spinothalamic. Now, you see, these are called spinocerebellar, 2 in each side. From the spinal cord to the cerebellum. You know cerebellum. Maintains what?
Balance.
Balance, equilibrium, right? So spinocerebellar. So, from your body, the body position signal goes to the cerebellum. Cerebellum maintains the balance, right? So to maintain balance, your brain cerebellum needs to know which way the body is tilting, right? To maintain balance. The brain must know, right? Which way your body is moving. So spinocerebellar, ventral and dorsal. Ventral in the front, dorsal in the back. Body position signal is carried. In the back of the spinal cord, in the white matter, you have fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. They are responsible for fine and crude or deep touch. Fine and crude touch. So, pain, temperature, spinothalamic, right? And spinocerebellar, body position, going to the cerebellum, and fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus, just in general, know that, touch. Now, if you see the red ones, these are the motor tracts, right? Motor tracts, or descending tracts. The most powerful, most important motor tract is called corticospinal. Which is also known as pyramidal tract, also known as pyramidal tract. Do you remember in the cerebrum you have central sulcus? Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Central sulcus. This is the central sulcus. In front of central sulcus you have primary motor cortex, primary motor, and behind primary somatosensory cortex. You probably remember that. Last class we have talked about. And this is the primary motor, right? That means it is the main cortex that controls the movement, primary motor. So, from the neurons of primary motor, the axons come out and form the corticospinal tract. It enters into the spinal cord. So, it is the main motor tract. Main motor tract controls the movement of the skeletal muscles. Okay, skeletal muscle movement.